Hi, everyone. Good morning. Today we have a very special guest with us. Today we have Sully Bryan. She's the managing attorney for Wilner O'Reilly in Fresno. And today Sully is going to talk to us a little bit about DACA, some of the most commonly asked questions. So welcome, Sully.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here and to see you all smiling over here. So that's very nice for me. To see your smiling face after not seeing it for a little bit. Nice. Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit about DACA and what's the latest that's going on. And so just to give you a little bit of background, on December 6, 2020, just a couple of days ago, it feels like, a federal court in New York ordered that USCIS reinstate the DACA program as it was prior to all of these different things going on and following the regulations from 2017. What that means is that now USCIS is now accepting first-time applicants. So for those people that have never applied before, they can now apply, and these applications are being accepted by USCIS. The court also instructed USCIS to extend the renewals from that 1 year restriction to 2 years. Last, they have reopened the advanced parole program for all of those people that currently have DACA. You're able to seek advanced parole. And we'll talk a little bit about all of that in just a minute. But let's go over the guidelines really quick. So just the main guidelines, this is what everybody that's applying needs in order to qualify for DACA. First, that you have lived in the US since June 15, 2007. That you were under age 31 on June 15, 2012. So that means if you were born after June 15, 1981. Okay. That you were third, that you were physically present in the United States on June 15, 2012, and at the time of making that request for DACA, okay? And fourth, that you have either completed high school, you have the GED, or you're still going to school. And then last, that you have not been convicted of a felony or a significant misdemeanor, or 3 or more of these misdemeanors, and that you don't pose a threat to national security or public safety. So those are the main requirements, and we'll get into some questions regarding those requirements. Go ahead, Desmond, do you have any questions for me?
Yes, so one of the first questions is, what documents are preferred and are least likely to be questioned?
This is a great question. And so just to go over everything, when they're saying you have to have lived continuously in the US from 2007 until present time, that means from 2007 to 2020, and if 2021, then, until you apply, you have to show that you've been in the United States. This doesn't mean that you have to show every single day or every single month, but that you're showing a large portion of that time. Some of the easiest ways to do this is to show your school records. A lot of you have gone to school in the United States and have done, elementary, middle, and high school here. So that's one of the easiest ways to do that. And remember, when you're showing this evidence, you can't just show them a copy of your school records. You do need to show them a certified copy, which means you have to go and get this copy from the school district where you attended. And so that's easy because it will span all of those years in this one piece of paper or 2 pieces of paper, and that's going to be a really easy way to do that. And if it's certified by the school district, then the government is not going to really question it. They're going to say, okay, yeah, this looks like a valid document because it's coming from a government agency, okay? Some of the other things is taxes. That's a great way. Pay stubs. A lot of you guys are out in the workforce and working. Pay stubs, taxes, any sort of medical records, vaccination records, anything like this. And if you're, sometimes it's hard for people, right? Because they probably didn't go to school here. And they came in, but they came into the country a little bit later in life, so they don't have all of those school records from elementary to high school. So if that's the case, then we can, like I said, use parents' taxes, parents' pay stubs. There's other things we can use as well. But a lot of the times you're required to get vaccinated, so that's a good other thing to do. So we have a list, and I'm happy to provide it to Jasmine that you guys can go ahead and take a look for all of the other types of examples. But there's a ton of options for you. So just remember that if you don't have some of like one or two of these things, don't worry. I'm gonna provide that long list of options, and then you guys can take a look at that and see what can help you out. But do remember that you want to show every year, okay? So yeah.
Thank you, Sully. And then the other follow-up question to that is, what about letters from friends or former employers?
That's a great question. And yes, those are valid. So one of the biggest concerns for people is showing your physical presence in the US on June 15, 2012, right? And that's kind of hard because if you were going to school during that time, that's not a school, that time in the year is not always time where people are actually in school. So that's going to be a hard one. And in the past, I've always relied on you mentioned letters from friends, pictures, sometimes pictures, the older pictures, right, will have the dates on them behind them. So we'll use these pictures and show that as evidence. One time in particular that I remember this being an issue for one of my clients is they got a notice saying, hey, we don't think you qualify because you don't have any evidence of this June 15 date, right? And what we did is we got a letter from their where they rented, the manager there, and that person provided a letter for us, and then they got approved. So this was excellent. So like I said, there's so many different options. Don't put yourselves in a box and think, oh, I don't qualify because I don't have this particular thing. I would prefer for you to ask Jasmine or myself for any clarification or doubts that you guys have. And so, like I said, you can be creative. Now, if we're using letters from friends, family members, or like I said, this manager, you want to ask them for a copy of their ID, and they do need to sign this. This is the best way for the government to show the government that this is a legitimate letter, that this is not a fake or made up person. And also, it's one of the requirements when someone's submitting this type of letter for them to show evidence that this person exists. So if they have an issue with showing their ID, just explain to them that the letter won't be held valid if we don't show that information, okay?
Thank you, Sully. The next question is, do individuals need to show proof that they are enrolled or about to be enrolled in school?
Yes, absolutely. One of the requirements is that you completed high school or that you have your GED or that you're currently enrolled. And something I mentioned to people because this actually is asked a lot, or people assume they don't qualify for DACA because they never went to high school here. And so a lot of the times we have kids that came in and they were 17 years old and they didn't go to high school because they were, that would have been already their last year, right? So what I recommend in a situation like this is I tell them, hey, go get enrolled in night school, and that qualifies as evidence that you're currently enrolled in school. So it's not too late. If you have all the other requirements but didn't get high school or a GED here in the US, go out there and get enrolled, and this does qualify. Okay. Yeah.
And then the final question I have, and this is the most common question, Sully, we get is, what does this mean about advanced parole? And what is advanced parole?
Yeah, I get that question a lot, and I get a lot of concern regarding this question. So let's explain what advanced parole is. In a very simple way, advanced parole is a permission for people to be able to leave the country. And so the way this works is you request permission to leave before you leave the country. Okay, so you're applying for this with USCIS and you're saying, look, I need to leave the country. And there's three reasons that a DACA applicant can leave the country. If your work is asking you to do work, to go to like a job outside of the country for your work, you can apply. If it's for educational purposes, so let's say I want to go do some foreign studies, that can also be used. And lastly, for humanitarian reasons. And what that means is for a valid reason that that is special circumstances. So either you have a grandparent, this is the one that we use often in my office. We have very old grandparents and you haven't seen them for 20 years or many years, right? Or you have parents outside of the country or an aunt that you are really close to and either they're sick or just elderly and you've been told they don't have a lot of time um, left and you want to go spend some time with them, this is the most common that we use for requesting advanced parole. So I'm going to explain a little bit and I'm going to go back into the evidence for just in a minute, but we'll explain what it means. So you're asking USCIS to allow you to leave the country before you leave and give you this advanced parole. And what it is it's like a letter, it looks like a letter, and it's permission so that when you come back to the country, you are allowed to come back in and you're paroled back into the United States. So biggest question is, are you sure it works, right? And there's a lot of concern about this. So just explaining, you don't leave the country until you get the approval notice for you to be able to present this document at the port of entry to come back into the US. So this is an official document that's given to you by the government, allowing you to enter. And so that's a good thing, right? And so why this is important to try to take advantage of is not necessarily for the purpose of right now, although sometimes I do think that you really do want to go see those grandparents and you haven't seen them. And honestly, it's so touching to hear when people go out there, visit their grandparents and that experience that they have in being able to do that. And so I think that's wonderful that this is open, but it's also important to take advantage of that advanced parole because it opens a lot of doors for applicants in the future. So I'm going to sidetrack here. To be able to get a green card, so legal permanent resident status in the US, you need two major things, right? You need a petition and you need a legal entry. So a legal entry can mean a lot of different things, but one of those is that you were paroled into the US, would qualify as a legal entry. And in this case, you can use advanced parole in the future as to fulfill that requirement of that legal entry. If you're able to then also get a petition, then you can apply for the green card here in the United States and do all of the applications here in the US and not have to ask for a waiver or do consular processing. And we can always follow up with a second video about those two differences. But this is a huge advantage because it sets people up for being able to qualify for their green card. And to me, this is a great option for people if they haven't thought about it or if they have questions, they should definitely reach out to us because it is a great program to take advantage of. Do you have any questions for me, Jasmine, specific to advanced parole?
No, that was the major one. Just what is it and what does it mean?
Awesome. So I'm going to go back a little bit to advanced parole and the evidence. So, right, if it's a work or educational purpose that you're traveling outside of the country, this should be easy for you to fulfill as far as evidence because we would just show either a letter from school or from your employer. The last option, that humanitarian reason, what we do is we show evidence that your family member is sick or that you should go visit them. And a lot of the times the way we do this is through either medical documents or letters from their physicians back in their home country and any evidence that supports all of that, and we'll present that along with the application to show. So we can't just say, hey, I have a grandparent that's sick and I need to go see them. You do need to show that evidence, but that's good because when you do go to the port of entry, if you've done everything correctly and you have DACA and there's no reason for you to not have DACA, then having to come back into the country, although it's always a risk to do these things, it shouldn't really be something that's so scary that you don't do because they should allow you and honor that application and that grant. Okay, I am going to just close out with telling everybody that, you know, there is a list of requirements and they seem fairly straightforward, which means that a lot of people have doubts that they do or don't qualify, right? And so if they have those doubts, my office does offer free consultations. If you call the number, then you'll be speaking with me about your concerns. Again, if they're free, so really take advantage of that. But the last requirement, that you haven't been convicted of a felony or significant misdemeanor, or that you're not, you know, a threat to national security. This is a big one, and people automatically assume that they don't qualify because of something. Before you make any assumption on any of these requirements, talk to us, because there are ways for us to figure it out and see if you really don't qualify or you do, and we'll, you know, we'll try to figure out with you. And I just don't assume is probably the biggest thing I can say. Don't assume. Ask before you shut the door and don't apply. Okay.
Yes, very true. Well, thank you so much, Sully. Really appreciate you taking the time to answer these questions for us.
Thanks for having me.